Everywhere you look in the UK right now, the once lush and green landscape is dry and brown. And parts
On Sunday
of the
night,
country are now
Jeremy
in
Clarkson posted 3 words under a weather screenshot, and everyone reported the rude one. Nobody looked closely at the other 2. And once you understand why he chose the word already, you'll understand something about this harvest that hasn't made a single headline yet. Welcome back. If this channel is your source for the numbers underneath the headlines, hit subscribe. Let's get into it. Here's what I want you to sit with before we go any further. It was the 9th of August. British wheat harvests don't normally finish for weeks after that date. So when a man who's spent 5 years surviving bad years on camera says his harvest is already gone, while crops are still standing in fields across the country, what does he actually know that the rest of us don't? Sunday evening, 9th of August. Clarkson shares a screenshot of the BBC weather forecast for Chipping Norton, the town next to his 1,000-acre diddly-squat farm. It showed 29 degrees that day, with the week ahead climbing further, toward 33 in Oxfordshire, as England headed into its 5th heatwave of 2026. Underneath it, 9 words, no elaboration. Harvest already fucked. May as well just enjoy it now. That's the entire post. And most outlets ran it exactly the way you'd expect. Grumpy farmer, hot weather, funny swear word, next story. But the word doing the real work in that sentence isn't the one they blurred out. It's already. Think about the timing. In a normal year, the heaviest land and the latest drilled fields don't come off until deep into August, sometimes into September. There was standing wheat all over England the night he posted that. Clarkson didn't say the harvest was going badly. He said it was finished, while a large share of the national crop was still in the ground. And here's why that lands differently coming from him specifically. Across 5 series of television, Clarkson's entire brand has been built on riding out disaster and coming back the next spring. Floods, crop failures, dead animals, rejected planning applications, all turned into content, never written off early. This is the first time, on record, that he's called a year over in August. So let's actually check whether he's right, because that's the part nobody covering this story bothered to do. 9 days before that post, on the 31st of July, AHDB, the industry body that tracks UK harvest data, published its first 2026 harvest report. The numbers: average winter wheat yield running at 6.8 tons per hectare, 13% below the 5-year average. And the detail that should have been the headline: 90% of the farms surveyed came in below their own individual 5-year average. Not the industry average, their own normal. 9 farms out of 10 underperforming their own baseline in the same season. AHDB's second report, a couple of weeks later, confirmed it wasn't a blip. With the majority of the wheat area now cut, average yields were still sitting 13% below the 5-year line. Winter barley finished close to its own average, but spring barley was tracking toward its worst yield since comparable records began in 1999. And oats were heading for a multi-decade low. The one genuine bright spot in the entire report was oilseed rape, which came in significantly above average. Proof this isn't a story where every single crop failed identically, but one where most of them did. And AHDB's own director was blunt about the cause: a waterlogged winter, followed directly by a hot, dry season on top of it. Crops that went into the ground wet came out thirsty. It's the earliest UK harvest since AHDB's records began in 2006. So when Clarkson wrote already on the 9th of August, the official data published 9 days earlier was already telling the same story. If you want the receipts behind the headlines rather than just the headlines themselves, that's exactly what this channel does. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss where this goes next. And I want to know in the comments, if you're cutting right now, what's your yield actually looking like against your own normal? Now here's what makes this land even harder, because this isn't the first move Clarkson made this summer. Back on the 27th of July, nearly 2 weeks before the heatwave post, He'd already revealed that 200 acres of diddly squat had been left with nothing grown on them at all this year. Not a failure. A decision made in advance, because he and his team had worked out that planting wheat or barley on that ground would simply lose money before it even went in the soil. Put the two together. A fifth of his arable ground deliberately left empty because the numbers didn't work. And less than 2 weeks later, the rest of it written off because the weather finished what the price had already started. That's not one piece of bad luck. That's a business where both directions, plant or don't plant, failed in the same summer. And about a week before the harvest post, Clarkson gave a warning that's arguably more serious than the post itself and got far less attention. He said he was genuinely scared, not of a bad yield, but of fire. 7 years of farming, he explained, had trained him to worry about crops being too wet to cut. This year, for the first time, that risk flipped entirely. Tinder-dry standing crop, heavy machinery running through the middle of it, and, in his words, all it would take was a discarded cigarette end or a spark from faulty equipment, and months of work could turn to ash in moments. That's not weather commentary. That's a man describing a live fire risk sitting in his own fields. Now stack the whole year. Last summer, at his own party, Clarkson had already told guests it looked set to be his worst year yet, a year that went on to include a bovine TB outbreak on the farm in October 2025, forcing cattle culls and wiping out breeding progress. He later admitted that profits from the television show itself were what actually kept the business running through that shocking harvest. When a fan pointed out that all this hardship at least made good television, his reply was blunt, yes, but most farms don't have a TV show keeping them afloat. This year, the opposite weather problem entirely, but the same result. A fifth of the ground deliberately left fallow, the rest of it declared finished with weeks of the season still to run. And a national picture, 90% of farms below their own average, the earliest harvest on record, an industry body's director openly describing mounting financial pressure on arable farms after several consecutive difficult years, that backs up almost everything he posted in 9 blunt words. Now, in fairness, 3 things are worth saying plainly, because this channel isn't interested in only telling you the version that gets the most views. First, this is one farmer's post, on one farm, not a national data set. Clarkson isn't a statistic. The reason it's worth 15 minutes of your time isn't his opinion alone. It's that the official numbers happen to point the same direction, and he has the largest audience in British farming to say it with. Second, heat wasn't bad for everything at Diddley Squat this year. The farm grew durum wheat, a Mediterranean crop that actually wants a dry run-up to harvest, and which had failed there before in a normal, wetter British year. This year, it worked well enough that Lisa Hogan took pasta made from it to Puglia in southern Italy and had a local chef cook it. The same weather that wrecked the feed wheat happened to deliver the one crop on that farm that didn't depend on the commodity market at all. Third, the picture isn't finished. AHDB's own reports get more reliable as the season progresses, and the heaviest land is often the last to come off. These numbers can still move in either direction, and if they do, that's worth its own follow-up. So where does that leave the actual story? Britain's most recognizable farmer spent 3 weeks doing something he hadn't done across 5 series of television. First, deliberately leaving a fifth of his land empty because the economics didn't work. Then, warning that he was genuinely scared of losing what was left to a spark. Then, writing off the remainder in 9 words, weeks before the season should have ended. Behind him, the official figures say wheat is running 13% below its 5-year average nationally, with 9 farms in 10 underperforming their own normal in the earliest harvest on record. None of that, on its own, is one bad day. It's a year where the arithmetic failed almost everywhere you looked, whether you planted or you didn't. So here's what I actually want from you. If you're harvesting right now, tell me your yield against your own normal. Tons per hectare or tons per acre, doesn't matter which, just say which one. I want to know whether 6.8 holds as the heavy land comes off, or whether it gets worse from here. And if you're in a part of the country having the opposite summer, say that too. I want to know both sides. Subscribe if you want the final numbers the moment the last AHDB report lands, because we'll be covering it in real time. Still farming, still watching the numbers, still diddly squat.